Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of my summer reading wrap-up. Work sort of stole all of my time and so I did not post a reading wrap-up. I didn't post anything really, but I especially didn't post a reading wrap-up for July, August, and September. So instead of wrapping up all of those books, which I will put on the screen now so you can see what I did read in their entirety. If it made it to Goodreads or Storygraph, I have like updated it on both platforms and recorded it and they're in these photos. There are a bunch of audiobooks that I know that I started, listened to a good chunk of, and then DNF'd and like never recorded it anywhere. So there is more reading that's just lost, and I could try and dig through like my library history, but I don't care to do that. Well, you can see the title. I'm titling this for like the algorithm, worst books of the summer. These are the lowest rated books from each month of the summer, and these are still decent reads. So in July, I have recorded that I read 11 books, and the first book I want to talk about is a 2.5 star, and then it is The Rest of the Story by Bauer. It's about this like broody senior hockey player who gets traded to this losery team, like the worst team in the league, and he gets there and day one he realizes that like there's no oversight on the team, that the team captain is abusive, like physically, mentally, verbally, potentially sexually. I think it's implied that he sexually assaulted one of the rookies, but I'm not sure if I'm just being like the most pessimistic human. Like he's the worst person. And within like 5 minutes of meeting his new team, Morgan, our veteran hockey player, Morgan comes in and like flips the table, gets this abusive captain fired and like blacklisted from the league. Like nobody in the NHL can take him on the team now because like he's under investigation. Basically ruins his career. And then starts rebuilding this team. Obviously, it's a gay romance. So like in between the hockey, the veteran captain and his like rookie-ish co-captain, they like put their heads together a lot to work on like hockey stuff, but also they think they're being really sneaky with like, oh yeah, we're totes doing sports stuff. And they're like cuddling and like holding hands under like the sports stuff that they're doing. And it's the weirdest paced book I think I've ever read, because there's like a fight at the beginning and there's a big fight at the end, and in the middle is just hockey and gay shit. Like cute, adorable, budding romance, falling in love, holding hands, making the first time special in a cabin in the woods. Like it's just like adorable fluff in the middle and then like acts of violence on either end. Oftentimes I will read a book and I'm like, why? Why did you introduce this conflict? Like these people should just talk like responsible adults, and then we wouldn't have this whole like big rigmarole of like misunderstanding when we know that they're meant to come together. Like I often complain about why can't we just have them talk and talk through their problems like mature adults and be cute, and the reason is it's fucking boring. This is a book where almost, aside from like the bookends of like action, almost nothing happens. It's just two men being real fucking happy, a hockey team of men bonding and being friends, and nothing happens. It's bizarre because like I thought I wanted it and then I got it and I was like, oh, I understand why conflict's important to a story. And like obviously like what a dipshit thing for me to say, but like I got exactly what I wanted and I didn't like it. So if you love fan fiction, holy shit, like this has such fan fiction vibes, and for some reason when it's fan fiction and people playing house with my favorite characters, love it, eat it up. Give me like nonsense of like, I don't know, I was a big Harry Draco shipper. Give me nonsense of like Harry and Draco like having a nice hike and holding hands and kissing in the woods and like ducking behind a tree. Give me that nonsense for characters that I love in their canon stories. It is really hard to get attached to these like Morgan and Shay, random nobodies, right? Like, because it's not fan fiction, or at least I didn't encounter, like if it is fan fiction, it's not a fandom I'm familiar with. And because I'm not invested in like these characters prior to them like playing house and going on fun dates and making friends and being guy pals, and then kissing, it's boring. It's that difference, I think, in like the level of buy-in. So I got what I wanted and I didn't like it, and I'm not blaming the book for that. I gave it 50%, 2.5 out of 5 stars. Finished this on July 8th, and this was a new buy. I did buy an ebook copy of this because I heard booktubers raving about this book on World Hoppers, and I just jumped in. I'm not mad, you know? Like, I had fun with like the stuff in the middle, but just like in terms of pacing and like expectations, not what I wanted. The other book that I want to list here is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. So I read this the first time, I think in June. I think it's in my June wrap up. And then I realized that I didn't remember anything about it. And so I reread it, and it is aggressively okay. Another 2.5 stars. Aggressively okay. Like, if you like the formula of Ali Hazelwood's books, the petitest petite pixie lady in STEM gets together with big oak tree scientist man, and they are like enemies to lovers in most cases, for reasons, forced proximity, they fall in love. And they're gonna have sex even though his penis is like so big that she can barely fit both hands around it. Like, Jesus Christ. Okay. Oh, there's a spider under there. Cool. We'll just pretend. Okay. You can barely fit both hands around it. Okay, my fingers are barely touching. This is a fucking puzzle. Like, what the heck? Romance authors, what are you doing? Here's a kombucha can for scale. Like, also ridiculous. Sorry, but like, if you like Ali Hazelwood's previous books and you like the formula, great. I'm at the point where I'm starting to get a little bit sick of them because they are now all blending together. Like, I can't tell you which details are from which story, and it makes it hard to feel invested in any of her characters because they're all kind of the same. Maybe I've read too many of them in like a short span of time, and like I know she has another book coming out. I saw her post about it on Instagram. I requested her young adult novel and I have an arc for that. I'm curious if that follows a similar pattern. It has to like not have the graphic sex. Like, surely our YA protagonist does not have a puzzle tube dick. I pre-ordered this one this time because I was excited about it, and then I read it and it was fine. It was fine. 50%, another 2.5 out of 5 stars. I'm not opposed to going back. Like, I like lady academics. Give me all the lady academics. I finished that on July 1st. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars, and it was a reread. Then we move on to August. I read 10 books in August. And again, these are all not bad books, but they are books that I had higher expectations for, and they didn't live up. Well, let's start with the DNF. August is when I read Red, White, and Royal Blue. The film was coming out, and I wanted to reread the book. And the first time I read it, I didn't love it. It was cute, and so then I reread it, and it was also fine. Hot take, I don't like Prince Henry. I don't know if that's a hot take. I don't like Prince Henry. The other thing is I've only ever listened to this on audio, and I think somebody pointed out that the person who does the audiobook narration sounds like a robot, like sounds like an AI generated voice. So maybe I need to pick up a physical copy and give that a try if I ever feel like reading it again, or I could just accept that it's not for me. Because I hit a certain point, I think it was around like the 80% point in Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I was like, this is enough. I got enough of the details here. I'm happy to watch the film without finishing this, and so I returned it to the library. So yeah, that was my DNF, and I didn't give it a star rating, even though I got to like 80%. I DNF'd it. It's fine. If you love it, I'm so happy for you. And maybe it's the format, maybe it's the audiobook. If I was reading them in my voices, like giving them the tone of voice that I would read a line a certain way, maybe I would like them better because then they're characters of my mind opposed to like whoever is reading and directing this audiobook, producing this audiobook. That can kind of, I guess, shape the experience. I DNF'd that, so that would be my lowest rated, which is like no stars. I didn't even give it stars because I didn't finish it. The rest of these are all 3 stars. So the first one is The Way I Am Now by Amber Smith. So this I have a reading vlog out for, should be up now. This is a sequel to a book that came out in 2016 called The Way I Used to Be. It's about a girl who has been sexually assaulted by her older brother's best friend who is fully an adult. He doesn't have a good relationship with his family. He basically lives at their house. He's like another child, and he sexually assaults her, and it's told over the 4 years of high school post-assault, and we watch Eden sort of change and respond, react to the trauma. And what I liked about it in 2016 when I read it was that it was brave to have big time jumps and to allow the reader to fill in what was happening in between, like the changes that were taking place, like the shift between the shift between Eden calling her parents mom and dad to their given names, like their legal names. That happens between like 2 chunks of the book, and we don't really know what happens in between, but obviously with that shift we can tell that their relationship is deteriorated. She's not looking at them as parents anymore, she's distancing herself from them, stuff like that. I thought it was really effective. Other readers did not. I was perfectly satisfied with the ending. Simon & Schuster US reached out. They were like, hey, there's a sequel coming out. Can we send you a copy? And I said, sure. And they sent me this beautiful box with a copy of the ARC in it and also a copy of the first book in paperback, which I have given away because I already have a copy in hardback. Thank you to Simon & Schuster for sending this. This picks up 4 months after Eden has come forward with a couple of other women against Kevin. And this really is about her doing like a pre-trial and then going to trial. It looks at the ways in which a survivor has to relive their trauma over and over again for the legal system and the flaws of that. The ways that the system is set up makes it incredibly difficult to seek justice. By default, they're very inclined to believe men. Like, it always comes down to like, well, what were you wearing? What were you doing? How did you provoke this? How can you prove that you said no? The question that comes up here is like, did you ever say no? The way that she eventually comes to respond gave me goosebumps. Like, that I thought was really powerful. Where this sort of lost me is quite early on. Eden deals, in the first book, Eden deals with her sexual assault by trying to reassert control over her body and have a lot of meaningless sex with people. So as like, I think a 14-year-old, she lies to Josh about how old she is, and he's a high school senior. He's legally an adult at this point in high school. He has an early birthday. He's 18. She's 14, so she's well below the age of consent, and she's lied about how old she is. And she has sex with him, and she's quite emotionally vulnerable with him, and she keeps coming back to him. He's the first person that she tells about the assault, like she discloses this to. Now in university, they're attending the same university. He has a friend whose housemate has moved out, and so she moves into that empty bedroom, and they happen to live in the same apartment building. They happen to be going to the same school, so they happen to kind of become friends, and they're like trying to have a relationship that never happened because of where she was emotionally when they first got together. And I think this is just like the jaded adult part of me. I feel like I didn't need the romance. Like, what I liked about this book is the living in the aftermath, like seeing somebody now taking medication for anxiety, depression, sleep, seeing somebody go to therapy and work through things in therapy, like seeing the trial and like the snapshots of that and like seeing her work on that in therapy. the friendship that she forms with her housemate, and her housemate's an athlete, and she starts to like gain confidence, and she decides to like stop drinking, stop smoking, and to start eating healthy and going for runs with her roommate, and the idea being that like we can see this shift in her as she starts to value her body and treat it with love, treat it with kindness, do nice things for it, instead of like putting this shell that her soul happens to be encased in really dangerous situations because she needs to create like distance and just feel things, whether they're good or bad. We see her caring for her body. So there are parts of this book that I really like. Both are quite graphic with the depictions of the sexual assault. Heads up on that. Did I need this? No. Is it an okay sequel? Yes. I personally didn't like the romance, but also I'm not the target market. Like, I'm not a teen. So maybe the romance needed to be there to like soften the blow of the actual interesting bits. So I finished this on August 13th. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and this was an advanced reader copy sent to me by Simon & Schuster for an honest review. Thank you, Simon & Schuster. The next book that I wanted to talk about here is another 3-star read. Again, a good rating. But like I had higher expectations for this, and I feel like part of this is the packaging of this. It set up a different expectation for this, and I wasn't the only one. Like when I talked about Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones in the live, like other people had like based on the back different expectations. So first of all, there's just like a flat out like typo on the back here. Like, if a 15-year-old thinks he sees a person in full Blackfeet regalia, he's 12. Our protagonist is 12. And then it talks about like he discovers his house is bigger and deeper than he knew. I was thinking like House of Leaves. There's nothing about the house being like he does measure the house, but there's nothing about it being like impossible. There is a ghost. The house is haunted. And it's almost like a vampire novel instead of a ghost novel. It's being haunted by something that's like draining life from his little brother. And there are interesting ideas, but there's a lot of mess. And then the ableist ending, I don't know, it would be full spoilers for me to say what is ableist about the ending, but I didn't like it. And I thought this was gonna be interesting, and there were parts of it that were, and then parts that just don't work. The first read through was incredibly confusing. The way that Stephen Graham Jones writes takes some getting used to, and that is something that like I ended up listening to a couple of podcasts on other Stephen Graham Jones books just to get a sense of like what other folks thought, and a lot of them mentioned that his writing takes getting used to, that like you need to get used to his narrative voice. So the first time I read this I was like, what the fuck did I just read? I reread it and it got a little bit easier once I was used to his narrative voice, but like it was really like, for a book so small, it's not even 100 pages. It's, okay, I lied. It's 108 pages. It's barely 100 pages. This took forever to get through. Like there were parts where, you know, when if you're in a lake, the undertow, and when you're like swimming out or wading out, you don't realize how powerful it is. And then you turn around and you try and walk back to shore, and like dragging yourself back to shore. That is what reading this book felt like. It felt like fighting an undertow the whole time I was trying to go anywhere. Like if I was trying to walk my way back to shore to get somewhere in this book, I was like dragging my feet through the water trying to fight this undertow back to shore to find some semblance of understanding. Like it was so much work. So disappointing, because I thought it was gonna be really cool and it didn't quite live up to what I wanted. I finished that on August 19th and August 27th, and I gave it 3 stars both times. The first time it was a new buy, the second time was a reread. The last 3-star book that I have here is a 3-star book, and it's on this list because it's, again, it's disappointing. I was so looking forward to Funeral Songs for Dying Girls by Cherie Dimaline. I love Cherie Dimaline. I love her writing. I have loved the other things that I have read by her so much, and I was so excited for this. Funeral Songs for Dying Girls. This is like an Emily clickbait title. I saw it, I pre-ordered it, I was so jazzed for this. Maybe it's because I was so hyped for this. It didn't quite live up. We have Winifred. She is a teen who lives in an apartment building above like a funeral parlor in a graveyard. There's like an office, like, you know, an office building and like a funeral, like the maintenance people. Her dad does maintenance at the cemetery. And we learned that her mom has died and her dad is really checked out because he's so grief-stricken. And there are rumors that the cemetery is haunted because she spends so much time like hanging out amongst the graves, just being like a moody teen, hanging out in the graves and then like quickly ducking away when like the actual mourners are in the cemetery, that people start to think that the cemetery is haunted. And then because the father might lose his job if they're not making enough money, they lean into this being haunted and draw a television crew in for this like haunted graveyard thing. And like her cousin, who's like quite enterprising, has pitched herself as this like spiritual medium and does all this like fake indigenous like woo-woo stuff to add like legitimacy to it, and it's just basically bullshitting a bunch of white people by performing indigeneity for the cameras. Other hand, there is really a ghost of a girl who has died in the ravine, and Winifred can talk to her. She kind of falls in love with her. This did not go where I was expecting it to go. Maybe I need to reread it with different expectations. Like maybe my expectations were just too high because I was like Cherie Dimaline plus my favorite topic, death and like funeral practices. Yes, please. Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe I hyped it up too much. It was a letdown that it wasn't a 5-star read, like a new favorite. So I finished that on August 5th. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and it was a pre-order. It was a new buy this year. Then we go to September. I read 3 books in September, and the lowest rated book was In Charm's Way by Lana Harper. So this is the 4th in the Thistle Grove, that's what it is. It's the 4th in the Witches of Thistle Grove series, and it's about a character who has like a... No, I can't say anything without spoiling it. I didn't like the romance in this one. It's a witchy romance. I liked like the intrigue, the world building around Thistle Grove. I like learning that there's fae and there's other like pockets of magic outside of Thistle Grove, because right now what we've seen is like this pocket, and once witches leave Thistle Grove, they are further away from this like where the ley lines cross, and there's like the source of magic in the lake, and their powers wane when they leave Thistle Grove, so they're really stuck in Thistle Grove. So with this character, we have an outsider come in who's like she's like part fae, I think, and she's the romantic interest. I just didn't like the romance. Like, I didn't like their relationship. I was always waiting for the shoe to drop, and then it does, and the ending where they get back together just feels icky. It feels yucky. It doesn't feel good that these two characters ended up together after her betrayal. That's not really what I'm looking for in a romance. You know, if this were a fantasy book, if this were like witches and fantasy and like romance, opposed to like romance with witches and fantasy, you know, like it's the attitude, the mindset that you go into this book with certain expectations. If it had been fantasy with like a little bit of smooching, fine. That it's romance and this is what I got? No, thank you. So if that works for you, that's great. I'm so happy. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Again, not a bad read, just not what I want from a romance. So I finished that on September 30th. I gave it 3.5 stars, and that was an advanced reader copy that I requested from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. Those are my worst books of the summer. These are the books that like let me down in some way, didn't go as expected, didn't work for me in some way. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What is a book that has disappointed you? Like either because like the marketing was wrong and your expectations weren't set right, or like was it a hyped book, like a pre-order, a sequel, a series finale that just flopped? Let me know, commiserate with me. Thank you to my patrons who make videos like this possible. I really appreciate their support. The money that they provide enables me to buy things for this channel, new filming equipment, new software. I recently updated my editing software to one that wasn't from like the mid-2000s. It's fine. It's fine. I've updated it. It's incredibly difficult to use because it's so many versions away from the one that I'm used to. But thank you patrons for allowing me to do stuff like that, to continue with this hobby, to continue making things on this channel. If you are interested in supporting the channel, in having access to the patron exclusive Red Rum Book Club, where we're reading through Stephen King books in publication order and chatting about them together. The link for the Patreon page is in the description box down below. I hope that you are all doing well, that you are staying safe, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye.